Well, hey everybody, it is Chef Kibby, and if you've ever gone on to Google or another search engine and typed in the three words, how to cook, you know that it tends to autocomplete with the most popular search items on the internet for that particular three-word phrase. And I did that earlier today, and I was kind of surprised by some of the results, and surprised by the fact that I had a lot of those ingredients lying around. And so I'm going to answer 4 of the most popular how to cook search queries on the internet. And I'm going to do all 4 of them in no particular order, live here tonight on Cookin' with Kibby, live at 9. Let's do this. Cookin' with Kibby. We'll make some yummy food. Cookin' with Kibby, yeah. Something that rhymes with food. So put on an apron and grab you a knife. You're gonna have the time of your life. Cooking and cutting and chopping and mixing and stirring and cooking and cutting and stuff. Cooking with Kibby. 'Cause Kibby's your cooking dude. Well, hello again, and welcome to Cookin' with Kibby live at 9. My name is Chef Kibby, and Cookin' with Kibby is here to help you and your family get back into the kitchen cooking and eating together, because I believe that life is better when we're cooking together. Tonight on Cookin' with Kibby Live, our second episode, due to the coronavirus or COVID-19 quarantine situation, I wanted to come to you live at 9 o'clock Eastern every evening to give you some really practical and helpful advice of how you can get the most out of your time stuck in your home kitchen. And so I went on the internet, as you do, and typed in the words how to cook. And it came up with a few items that I thought were interesting and items that I thought that I could teach you how to make this evening. And so I am going to do a cooking demonstration live, no cuts, no edits. This is a one-man show, okay? Just so you know. No other actors, performers, producers, writers, directors, cameraman. I am doing it all tonight. So this should be a trip. This should be a lot of fun. I mean, we tested things out a little bit last night and it worked pretty well. So if you haven't done so already, you can find me on other social media outlets such as Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Sorry, no Snapchat or TikTok at this particular point. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, I highly encourage you to do so. You can find the Cookin' with Kibby podcast on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, and Spotify. Okay. Oops, that didn't work out very well. All right, I'm going to fix one of my graphics here real quick so that it actually makes sense when I pull it up on the screen. Here we go. All right. Here we go. Now do we see it? All right. So you see over to my left kind of a screen capture of some of the top Google search items of when you put in the 3 words, how to cook. This is what pops up on my screen, at least. It may be a little bit different from yours. But I circled 4 of those items, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I am going to now demonstrate how to do those 4 items right here, right now. And we're going to start with one of the best of them, and that's how to cook bacon in an oven. And I have an oven over there. I'm going to switch over to the other camera here. All right. I have bacon right here on a tray, ready to go in the oven. So I don't know if you're going to be able to hear me as I walk into the other room, but we'll just see how this works. We're trying it out for the first time, all right? Come on. Work with me, camera. Oh, hey, there we go. All right, so I'm taking the bacon into the other room because, well, I have the oven in the other room, right here. As you can see, it's very loud, so I didn't want to have it in the same room as where we're creating and everything else. So, bacon in the oven. That part was easy. All right, so heading back into into the studio. Switch the camera back over here. All right. Hey, it worked. How about that? All right. Okay, so we're cooking bacon in the oven. This is my preferred method of cooking bacon, as a matter of fact, because I find that cooking bacon on a countertop or stovetop, the bacon, when it's cooking, it tends to curl up a little bit, and so having it in the oven allows for even, steady heat all the way around the bacon, so it cooks nice and evenly, crisps up really nice, and it just makes everything's so much easier. Not to mention, I can kind of set it and forget it. I don't have to keep, tossing it back and forth. I can just leave it in the oven. It's good to go. While the bacon is cooking in the oven, we can get started on our next item up for bid, and that is cooking quinoa. And in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and switch on my induction range over here. Hopefully that's not going to make too much of a loud whirring sound for the recording purposes. I'll show you what we got going on down here on my counter. You can see I have an induction range that is preheating the pan there, and to that pan I'm going to add some butter. I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil to that as well. Okay. Now, for this particular application of quinoa, we're actually going to be doing kind of a warm or hot quinoa as a side dish, similarly to the way you would present cooked rice or other cooked grains of some sort. Quinoa is a very versatile grain, and I'll get more into that as the demonstration progresses. But for our particular application tonight, I'm going to be producing a hot quinoa side dish. All right? So let's go back to the angle down here on the stovetop. The butter is starting to melt in the pan along with the olive oil. And to that, I'm going to add some chopped onions. And a little bit of minced garlic. I have to believe this is the beginning of many a delicious dish. A little bit of butter, a little bit of olive oil, some onions, and garlic. There's a lot of flavor being created in this pan already. I don't know if you can smell that flavor wafting into your living rooms as I speak here. Now, to really bring out the flavor in these ingredients, we need to add a little bit of kosher salt. Pretty decent pinch of salt, and then a few cracks of black pepper. I'm just going to give that a stir. Now, what I'm doing here is classically known as the pilaf method for cooking a starch or a grain. So I'm starting out with the aromatics, the aromatic vegetables, the onions, the garlic, seasoned with a little bit of salt and pepper, and cooking in some butter and olive oil to saute or sweat those vegetables to start coaxing some of the flavor out of them. And that's going to then infuse the rest of the dish with flavor as the cooking process continues. Now, like I said, quinoa is a very versatile dish, and much like rice, it is incredibly easy to prepare. You don't have to go to all this fancy stuff if you don't want. You can honestly just start with some water, some salt, and some quinoa, and just call it a day. But I'm showing you this variety just because I have the ingredients, and I wanted to use them, and trust me, if you were in this room, you would know why I'm doing it, because it smells amazing already. By the way, the minced garlic, you don't necessarily have to mince your own. You can go and find minced garlic at the grocery store, and it works really, really well. Keeps in the refrigerator almost forever. All right. I really like the flavor that's been created here, and so I'm ready to add the water. I'm going to switch cameras again so you can see what's going on. I have the water right here. We're going to add that in to the pot. I'm going to crank that temperature up a little bit because I want to bring that water up to a boil. Now again, if you're serving this hot and you wanted to add even more flavor into this dish in a very simple, easy, cost-effective way, rather than using just plain water, you can use a liquid medium that already has a lot of flavor built into it, such as a stock or a broth, like chicken broth or vegetable broth. It might depend on the type of dish that you're serving it with. For example, the salmon that we're going to be serving it with tonight, you might want to find a nice seafood broth or maybe a vegetable broth to infuse some extra flavor into that quinoa and make it pair really nicely with the other items on the menu. Now, the quinoa itself, if you haven't seen it before, looks a little something like this. These tiny little grains. It is a grain that is native to South America, and it was almost completely eradicated when the conquistadors came through South America several centuries ago. Thankfully for us, it did survive, and we can still cook with it and eat it. It's very easy to cook, and it is chock full of nutrients, very high in protein. It is naturally gluten-free, and very flavorful and very versatile. Now, depending on the variety that you get, it might need to be rinsed in cold water before you cook with it because it has a natural coating on the outside of it. It's not going to hurt you at all. It just has a little bit of an off-putting taste if you're very sensitive to things like that. All right. So now I've got the water is up to a rolling boil, and so I'm going to go ahead and add my quinoa into the mix. Give that a good stir. And hopefully the camera can catch that we've got the quinoa going up to a nice rolling boil in there. Once that's the case, we can find the lid to the pan and set that over top. I'm going to turn that heat down just to bring it down to a bare simmer. Once it's already come up to a rolling boil, we can turn that temperature down really, really low and just keep it at a bare simmer. Excuse me. We keep the quinoa at a bare simmer until it's cooked. It only takes about 10-15 minutes before it is fully cooked, which again, if you're in a hurry and need something to put on the table, quinoa is a great option. All right. So now that we're at the kind of set it and forget it portion of the quinoa, let's go back to the bacon and see how that is coming along. So I'm going to switch the camera again and head out to the other room and check on what's going on in the oven. All right. Follow me, follow me, follow me. Can you see me? Ah, here I am. Here I am, the one making you bacon. Oh man, can you smell that? I wish you could. There, but not quite. I think we might just need a few more minutes. Plug in my charger so that my phone doesn't die. All right. While we're waiting and anticipating for that bacon to get finished, let's move on to the asparagus part of the program. Happen to find these at our local Meijer superstore right across the street here. Happen to be on sale, 99 cents a pound. It's a great deal, so go check out Meijer if you're here in Marysville and take a look and see if they still have some in stock. So, and in stock, stock, like asparagus stalks. Okay, so you see these nice, big, beautiful stalks of asparagus. Now, one of the things that you need to keep in mind with the asparagus is how to get rid of the woody ends. I'm going to bring this close to the camera so you can see. So you have the nice tender part of the asparagus, and then you have the woody stem end of the asparagus. Now, there's two ways that you can take care of that stem. You can either take a knife and go through and cut through all the asparagus, which is kind of the quick fix, if you will. However, you're not necessarily guaranteed to get the best yield out of your asparagus. So the best way to get the root ends off of the asparagus is actually to just take the stalk in two hands, like so, and just kind of snap it. And the asparagus will snap at the most vulnerable point where the woody end stops and the tender part of the asparagus begins. And so if you want to be sure that you're getting all of the tough, kind of brittle part of the asparagus off, the best way to do it is to snap it. Now, look at that. Look at the difference there in these two stalks. Okay, so if I had just come through with a knife and cut them all the same way, this would have had too much taken off, and this one not enough. So I proved my point, y'all. All right, so we're just going to do that to all of these stalks of asparagus. Just a reminder, if you haven't done so already, you can find me on social media channels such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And since we're here on YouTube, I might as well mention that I do have a YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button and click the bell for notifications because, at least for the time being, I am going to be going live at 9 every night to answer your cooking questions because I know a lot of you are being forced to rely on your own cooking abilities for the first time in a long time. And I want to be here for you to answer your questions and make your cooking experience a more enjoyable one. All right, so we have the asparagus here. All those beautiful stems have been trimmed. Now we come to the part of seasoning the asparagus. Now, asparagus could do with a little bit of oil before it is cooked, and we're actually going to cook this in the oven on a sheet tray lined with aluminum foil, like so. I just happen to have one sitting underneath my table here. So a couple different things you can do. You can, obviously, you want to season it with a little bit of salt. I'm going to use some kosher salt here. Once you coat it in oil or fat of some sort, that salt will adhere a little bit better to the asparagus. We can use, my preferred oil would be extra virgin olive oil or an olive oil blend. A lot of times when you're roasting things in the oven, the olive oil can't hold up to high heat, and so a blended oil will often work really, really well. However, I happen to know of another source of fatty, oily substance that we have available at our disposal right here, right now. And I think I can take it out of the oven right now as well. So let's switch over to the other camera and make our way back into the oven. Now, if you've ever hung out with me in the kitchen, you know that one of my cardinal rules is never to throw away flavor. There's a lot of flavor inside this oven. There's a lot of flavor that's been produced in the roasting of this bacon. And we do not want any of that flavor to go to waste. So one of the nice things about cooking bacon in the oven is not only is it really just easy, it's simple to do. You can kind of set it and forget it. And the other thing is that I've lined this sheet tray, as I did the other one, with aluminum foil. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, it makes for a much, much easier cleanup. Secondly, it helps me to catch things in the pan that I want to keep, such as this beautiful bacon fat. I don't know if you can catch that on the camera. You can see all that beautiful bacon grease that is floating around on that pan. And as I've said before, and I'll say it again, in my kitchen, you do not throw away flavor. That is a cardinal rule. And so I'm just going to pour that bacon grease over that asparagus. Oh, yeah. That asparagus has never been so happy as it is right now. Set that bacon aside. Now the salt should adhere a little bit better to the asparagus. Oh yeah, perfect. And the other thing is the bacon fat also has a lot of sodium in it already, and so it's going to infuse a lot of flavor into the asparagus. A little bit of cracked pepper. Also for a nice vinegar note, asparagus does really well with a little bit of balsamic vinegar. We're just going to give that a little drizzle here. Like so. Gloved hand. We're going to toss that asparagus, all that delicious flavor being produced there. Mom always reminds me to spray my pan before I put it in the oven. Even when it's lined with aluminum foil, you want to be sure to give it a good spray first. All right. So that's the asparagus. All we have left is the salmon. And I'm going to go ahead and put the salmon on the same sheet tray as I have the asparagus. So I have just a simple fillet of salmon. It's a skin on. I've already marinated it for, you can marinate it for about 20-30 minutes. You don't really need to marinate it any longer than that. Because any longer than that, the marinade will start to break down the salmon and even kind of cook it a little bit. The acid will do so. All right. So now we're ready to take this and place it into the oven. Mobile cam, here we go. All right, so taking the asparagus and the salmon and placing that into the oven. It's already preheated to 350 degrees. Can it get any easier than that? I don't know that it can. I mean, obviously, if this wasn't, the middle of March, I might be cooking it in a slightly different fashion. Let's say if this were, middle of July or August, I might take that same asparagus and that same salmon and throw it outside on the char grill. I wasn't about to do that tonight because it is the middle of March, and although it's been kind of a rainy day here in Marysville today, not particularly cold, I probably could have grilled out, but it is 9:30 at night, and it's already really complicated as it is setting up all of this camera experience that I have around me. I wasn't about to try and put a char grill outside and try and film that as well. Needless to say, you don't have to wait until grilling season to enjoy a nice piece of salmon or some nice cooked asparagus. I'm roasting both of those in an oven already preheated to 350 degrees, and depending on the thickness of the salmon and the size of the asparagus spears, it could take anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes to cook those two products. Now, if I were being a little picky about things, I probably wouldn't put them necessarily on the same sheet tray because they won't necessarily cook in the same time frame. But for the sake of television tonight, I decided to just go ahead and throw them together on the same sheet tray and just call it a night. Okay? Now, the quinoa has been cooking. I want to take a look and see how close we are to that being finished. Doesn't seem to be close at all. So much for magic of television there. So it looks like the glass steamed up a little bit, and I turned the temperature down a little bit too far on the quinoa to keep it cooking. But that's okay. Magic of television. We're not going to do any cuts. We're just going to leave it as it is. So easy enough. It's not going to take very long to cook. And again, depending on the thickness of the asparagus and the salmon, it could take anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes to cook in the oven. In the meantime, I could be cleaning up my kitchen, which is always a good thing to do. I don't know about you, but a lot of times I run into a situation in which I have been doing some cooking in the kitchen, and I finish up dinner, and we sit down to the table and eat that meal, and then we leave the table and see just piles and piles of dishes all over the place. Well, this is one of those dinner preparations that if you're doing so in the particular order and in the stages that I have shown you tonight, you can create this meal and be able to clean up behind you while things are still cooking, and you don't have to necessarily manage or maintain things too intentionally during this part of the process. So you could finish cleaning up some dishes, get the table set, pour a nice bottle of wine, and then before you know it, the quinoa is cooked, the asparagus and the salmon ready to come out of the oven, and you're ready to sit down to a meal. And isn't it a nice feeling to leave the table and come to an already clean kitchen? I know that's a good feeling in my mind, and hopefully you'd feel the same. All right. Now we're starting to see some steam rising from the quinoa over here. If any of you watching have any questions, feel free to enter those into the live chat here. Like I said, I'm going to continue to provide this service to you every evening this week. And if you're someone who has been affected by the quarantine, not necessarily directly affected by the virus itself, but affected by the quarantine situation that a lot of us have been forced into, where we're being forced to be isolated. I want you to know that just because you're isolated doesn't mean you're alone. And if approaching the kitchen to cook a meal for you and your family is a potentially problematic or stress or anxiety-inducing scenario, I want to know how it is I can help you. If you have any questions or concerns with regards to home cooking, feel free to enter them into the chat or into the comment section of this video if you're watching it after the live show. You can also feel free to reach out to me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, as I will put up on the screen here as well. Reach out to me on any of the social channels. I also do have a website, cookinwithkibby.com. That's where you can find any new content that I have posted on any of my social channels, sign up for my email list, find new blog posts, and if you happen to be in the Central Ohio area and want to hang out with me in the kitchen, at least once we are permitted to do so again, you can find information about live appearances here in the Central Ohio area. All of that information and so much more is available at cookinwithkibby.com. And also, as I had mentioned before, I do have a podcast where I have 19 episodes already in the can, already produced, already recorded and released to the public, sharing personal stories about my childhood, about growing up and going up through the ranks of the food service industry, and also as a home cook, as a biological foster and adoptive dad, and the things that I've learned, and sharing some really practical knowledge and expertise that hopefully you can put into practice in your own kitchen so that you and your family can spend more time cooking and eating together. Because as I've experienced in my life, with my family, with my kiddos, the shared act of cooking and eating with our little ones is such a great way to build strong attachments and more meaningful relationships with those we love. So hopefully you'll reach out to me in whatever fashion suits you best, fits best with your lifestyle. And if you have any questions, concerns, or ways that I can help encourage and empower you to spend more time cooking and eating with your kiddos, I really hope to hear from you very soon. All right. The quinoa is cooking really nicely. I have some nice smells coming from the other room, so we should probably check and see how things are going in the oven. So I'm going to switch over to my mobile cam and see what's going on. All right. Getting a lot of exercise tonight, which is good because all the gyms are closed. Still needs just a few more minutes. The asparagus seems to be still a little firm. Starting to see some color on the outside of the salmon, which is a good thing. There we go. So we're starting to see some good color on the asparagus and on the salmon. Again, depending on your personal taste, I'm not a really big fan of really soft or overcooked asparagus. I like it to still have a little bit of crispness. Now, as far as the salmon goes, if you are following serve safe guidelines, you would need to be sure to cook that salmon to a proper internal temperature of at least 135 degrees. Now, I'm of the personal preference. I mean, I love sushi. I'm a big fan of raw fish. And there's a phrase that we toss around in food service of taking a steak or a piece of fish and just walking it through a hot kitchen. And that's enough cooking that needs to be done on it. But again, depending on your personal taste and the type of individual that you are serving. If you have someone who is elderly or a child or someone who is pregnant and you want to be extra safe about the type of food that you're serving them, obviously you want to make sure that you're cooking that salmon to its proper temperature. Now, while we're waiting for things to finish up, I've got a little bit of parsley here that we're going to chop up for a garnish. Really super simple. I mean, you can find whatever fresh herbs happen to be around in the garden. You know, I don't have a whole lot growing in my garden right now. Except a bunch of sage. We have a huge sage bush growing in our garden. So, pulling off the leaves from these parsley. And then just going to take that and bunch it up nice and neat on my cutting board. And then just give it a nice rough chop. If you're someone who's a little uncomfortable with using knives, I would love for you to reach out to me. I do have a lot of materials on how to safely and effectively handle knives. I've taught hundreds of people, literally hundreds of people, how to properly use a kitchen knife, and I would love to share my expertise with you as well. Goodness. This live streaming business is really hard work, people. It's not as glamorous as they make it out to be on YouTube. Now we're cooking with quinoa. All right. Let's take a look here. Just going to give it a little stir. Now, what we're looking for with the quinoa is we're looking for all the water to be evaporated out. And the other telltale sign that the quinoa is fully cooked is you'll start to see these little strings, these little curlicues will start to come off of the quinoa, and that's actually the germ of the seed that is coming off, and that's one of the telltale signs that you're getting really close to the quinoa being fully cooked. So I'm actually going to place that lid back on top of the quinoa. It's about 1 or 2 minutes out from being completely finished. In the meantime, we can go pull the sheet tray out of the oven that has our asparagus and our salmon. I'm going to move this out of the way so that we have a landing point. And back to the action camera. All right. One last trip over to the oven. See if everything's finished. Set that down here. All right. Okay, so we have this beautiful oven roasted asparagus with some delicious salmon. I just happen to have a plate waiting right here. See, all the moisture has cooked out of the quinoa, has been absorbed into the quinoa. So we're just going to put that right here on the plate like so. A few pieces of asparagus on the plate as well. And that nice juicy hunk of salmon right over top. Beautiful plate right there, don't you think? But if you remember from earlier on in the program, we started out talking about 4 different items that were on the Google top search engine queries for how to cook. It was how to cook salmon, how to cook asparagus, how to cook quinoa, and what was that other one? That's right, how to cook bacon in the oven. So we cooked the bacon, and we let it sit out from the oven and get nice and crispy. And we use the bacon fat and toss that into asparagus to make it nice and delicious coming out of the oven. But we didn't do anything with the bacon. Well, I think we should remedy that. So, grab a couple of gloves because I'm about to handle food that is ready to eat. I'm going to grab a couple of pieces of that delicious crispy bacon. And just crumble that over top. Because everything is better with bacon. Just like that. Chopped parsley to garnish. And there you go. That is 4. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4 of the most searched, sought-after recipes on the internet on one plate. Bacon cooked in an oven. How to cook asparagus, quinoa, and salmon. Doesn't that look good? Can y'all see that? Y'all see how delicious that looks? And it was so easy, too. I mean, yes, I did it in about 30, 35 minutes. If I had been just a little bit better prepared or had that quinoa turned up to the right temperature, I might have even been able to get it done in a little bit faster time. And so not only is this going to be a delicious plate of food, it's very nutritious. There's a lot of color on this plate, which means there's a lot of different vitamins, minerals, and nutrients that we're providing for our family. Salmon is a very good source of protein, and it's quite delicious, really easy to cook. The quinoa, you don't have to serve the quinoa hot. You can also serve it cold as well and make it into a grain salad. A lot of versatility. The concept for roasting the asparagus could be applied to practically any vegetable you think of. And in fact, I think later on this week on another episode of Cooking with Kibby Live at 9, I'm going to show you how you can roast practically any vegetable that you can find. So there's no excuses to not be getting vegetables into the mouths of your hungry children and spouses and whoever else it is that you are feeding. So once again, I want to thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to use my many years of experience in the food service industry and the blessings that I've had of being a husband and a biological foster and adoptive parent who loves to cook for and with my family, and to share that passion with you, hopefully in a way that empowers you and encourages you to spend some time cooking and eating with the ones that you love, because I think you'll find, as I have, that life is better when we're cooking together. Thank you so much for joining me. If you are watching this on the replay and want to ask me a question that I can answer on a future live episode, be sure to put that in the comments section of this video, or you can hit me up on any of the social media channels such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast as well, which you can find on Apple, Stitcher, or Spotify. And then go to cookinwithkibby.com. That's where you'll find my blog posts, my email list, all that good stuff. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, I'll see you in the kitchen. Peace! Yes, I'm sure I want to end.